So as exciting as relocating to the UK can be, a lot of international students are actually faced with quite a few several challenges when looking for student accommodation here in the UK. That's why in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you some detailed tips and resources on how you can find student accommodation right here in the UK. Hello there, my name is Tess and I'm a qualified accountant and I've been based in the UK for over the past 2 decades. If you're a student looking to relocate to the UK, or if indeed you might be a working professional or a family looking to come and settle down here in the UK, do please take a moment, do tap that subscribe button, tap the little bell icon so that you're notified when new videos go live, because there are plenty of resources on this channel dedicated to helping you make your relocation to the UK a successful one. So first of all, let's talk about the student accommodation types here in the UK, okay? There are 2 main types of student accommodation types you need to know. The first is student halls, okay? Student halls are those that are actually within or on the site of the university of your choice, okay? So these are usually situated on the relevant campuses. This can be a convenient option, particularly if you're in your first year or you're just coming in and you're unaware of what the location of the university is like and where the best possible location is for you, okay? So staying on student halls can be quite convenient because it removes the need for you to actually deal with external landlords, and actually, you know, it just makes the whole process of actually getting your student accommodation a more streamlined one. Your second option is to go into what is called a private student housing accommodation type. This is usually offered by external landlords, okay? So private landlords. So it could be something like those type of houses that you see right behind me, okay, which can usually be mixed, where you have a mixed group of students occupying one house and you are basically there renting a room within that one house and you're sharing the bills. This is usually much cheaper for a lot of people, although it can be trickier because obviously it means you have to arrange all the accommodation arrangements yourself with an external landlord. And when you're not in the UK, i.e. within the country itself, this can be quite tricky because you're unaware of where the best and most favorable location is for you. One of the best sites to find student accommodation is actually a site called Spare Room, okay? I'll leave the link to that site down in the description box below. But if you're looking to go into a private house share as your accommodation when coming into the UK, then a good site to check out is Spare Room. So the next thing you want to make sure that you're doing when you're coming into the UK searching for student accommodation is to actually research the area in advance as much as possible. This can be tricky, but you really do have to know as much about the area as possible. This is because you need to take into account things like the proximity of that student accommodation to your university campus where you're going to be studying at. You want to make sure that the accommodation that you're renting is also close to good transport links and networks. You want to make sure that there are shops and adequate restaurants. A lot of students, when they first come, usually don't have a suitable means of transport, such as a car, for instance, because that can be quite expensive. So you really do want to make sure that you're renting a place in an area that has really good, strong transportation links. So you want to be looking for things like trams, trains, buses that are at least walking distance from wherever it is you decide to live. So the next thing you need to know about student accommodation here in the UK is that you usually have to pay fees and deposits, okay? So usually your deposit will be equivalent to at least a minimum of between 4 to 6 weeks month's rent, okay? So if your rent is £400, you would be looking to pay a minimum deposit of an additional £400, okay? You do need to make sure that your finances are well considered. You also need to make sure that you factored in how much your average monthly utility bills is likely to be, so that you can ensure that you can actually afford that student accommodation. Another thing you need to be aware of is that a lot of landlords are actually required by law to secure your deposit in a deposit protection scheme. So do make sure that when you have signed up for this, you're aware of what your deposit protection scheme is. I'll leave a link to where you can get some more information on deposit protection schemes and how they work here in the UK down in the description box below. The next thing you want to be aware of is the fact that a lot of students, and particularly international students, are now required by landlords to actually provide a guarantor as a condition of the rental contract. Okay, so what is a guarantor? A guarantor is basically someone who is there, who has signed on that he or she is happy to take on the obligations and pay any rental or any other fees that you are unable to pay. Okay, so a guarantor is there in the instance that you as an international student or as a student in general is unable to pay your monthly rent, or if you've made any significant damages to the property and you're unable to make that payment, then your guarantor would be responsible to make that payment. Okay, so the only problem is that a lot of guarantors are actually required to be UK residents, and as an international student this can be very, very difficult, obviously, finding a guarantor when you are not actually based in the UK yourself. So there are actually sites where you're able to pay for them to act as a guarantor on your behalf in order to secure a student accommodation here in the UK. These usually do require you to make a payment for it, but it does make things much easier in the way of you being able to actually secure an accommodation here in the UK. I'll leave the links to those sites down in the description box below and you can have a look. So when renting student accommodation in the UK, you'll also usually be required to show some documentation, okay, such as a valid passport, a proof of your visa, and also documentation from your university confirming the course that you're actually registered to study here in the UK. So next we need to talk about insurance, okay. Insurance is always a good idea to have, both as a student and even as an international student, when renting student accommodation here in the UK. The reason is that a lot of student accommodations are generally mixed, okay, which means that you're usually staying with at least a group of 2 or 3 or more people and you're sharing households with them. So it's always a good idea to actually get some insurance to protect your items, to protect any other valuable assets that you might have whilst actually being in that student accommodation. A good site I usually recommend to students looking for insurance is a site like Cover for Students. And if you're looking for student accommodation right here in the UK, do make sure you take a moment to watch this video right here, because I have a feeling you'll find some very useful information in that video also. And if you haven't already, do take a moment to tap that subscribe button and tap the little bell icon so that you're notified when a new video goes live.